I've got a whole country to cover to try to save America, but I know that in the room today were the people that could push Common Core back, not only in North Carolina, but in the whole country. Because what we had with Heather in Indiana has shaken up the whole country. People are starting to pay attention. Why would Governor Pence do this? Why would they do that? Is there something wrong here? And that's how this whole thing starts, is people begin to pay attention, and that was followed by another state like North Carolina. It could start a wave that could change things. And it's not only important for North Carolina. The only way to turn America back from where it's going is for states to push back. So I believe in citizenship, and what we see today is that perfect critical mass of regular people, normal people, moms. You've got some legislators, we have a lieutenant governor, business people, just a good mix of folks, and that's the way it should happen. We shouldn't all sit here passive and dumb waiting for our elected officials to do something. The elected officials that are here today were invited by private citizens and Civitas and group, and we've all participated together, and that's how we're going to really change things. What I'd like to do just for a few minutes, after we've heard more of the details of Common Core and a lot about its history, is step back and just take a little broader perspective of the issue. Because this is really not about politics first. I mean, this is about our children. This is about their future, what they learn, whether they succeed in life, their opportunities, their prosperity, whether they reach their hopes and dreams, whether they learn those American ideas that make us so unique and exceptional. And that has a lot to do with whether or not our country succeeds and survives in the future. It's really about what works. So outside of the political framework, let's just think of education and children in terms of what we know really works. We can look at the facts, and that's really where we need to start. I mean, just a little bit of history, and we got a little bit of that this morning. But as far as the federal role and what's happened, a lot of us assume that the federal government's always been involved with health care and with education, with transportation, with energy, and frankly, most of that started back in the 60s and the 70s. And I think, frankly, Americans who lived 100 years ago would be astounded of the role the federal government is playing today. But if you think about it, I mean, we did have one of the best education systems in the world. In this country, it was very decentralized, but America was producing the best and brightest in all fields. But you can correlate the decline with the federal involvement in the establishment of the Federal Department of Education. And it was like all the other programs. Okay, we're going to offer some money. It's not going to take away your flexibility. Everything's fine. But they draw you in. It's been the pattern in transportation. The Department of Transportation, like education, was started under the umbrella of a defense initiative by Eisenhower, just to build an interstate highway system. That's why it was set up. But today, it has involvement in almost every road that's built in our country. And every little bit of federal money comes with union rules that often rule out local contractors. Beautification rules, mass transit rules. You lose more than a third of the total value of your gas tax dollars because it goes to Washington and comes back with the rules. 18 cents of every gallon of gasoline. And it grew out of just a very benign thought of let's build an interstate highway system. But that's been built out for years. With the EPA, focus on the environment, very important. But it's grown into a system that restricts our energy development all over the country, takes away state flexibility in every area. Of course, we've seen healthcare. Medicare was great for physicians when it started. It was a cost-plus phenomenon. You just, whatever you spend, they pay you for it. But now, they began to squeeze you. not only tell you what they're going to pay you, 10,000 codes of how you have to collect your money, but how you practice medicine, what you can do and what you can't. It's the same pattern over and over again. Welfare started just basically to help the poor. But now you've got television ads running all over the country telling you, forget your pride, sign up for food stamps, the incentives for states, it doesn't cost states very much money. All the states are out now peddling food stamps to get as many people to sign up as they can because it doesn't cost the states too much money. The pattern is the same. They dangle money in front of the states. The cover sheet of the program sounds very enticing. And frankly, almost all of our states over the years have sold out from this concept of competitive federalism, which is really what made America so exceptional. The good news is that you're seeing more and more states start to push back. A lot of states have said, no more, we're not going to take the Medicaid expansion. They recognize that more and more it's fool's gold. A lot of money up front, but even if you cost it out over 10 years, it costs states billions and billions of dollars, puts people on a program that doesn't pay doctors enough to see them. It's like giving people a free bus ticket when there are no buses coming to pick them up. And that's how that program is working. It's clear that centralization has not worked. We're spending more on transportation than we ever had, but our infrastructure is crumbling. More on education than we ever had. We're losing to other countries all over the world. More per capita on health care. But we've got one of the most unhealthy populations in the world right now. Centralizing doesn't work. And we know that if you've been in business, even if you've been in manufacturing, or almost anyone in business today knows that over the last several decades, America has come to understand that to produce quality, you don't centralize. You push decision-making down. And instead of setting standards, you develop a culture of continuous quality improvement. I'd like to talk about that just for a few moments because I'm a certified quality trainer. That's part of what I did. I worked in education, I worked in healthcare, I worked in a lot of business environment. And if you know any of the history of the quality movement in America, back in the 60s, when America, well, first, a big auto producer of the world, General Motors, Ford, suddenly we were losing track to little old Japan and the Toyotas and the Hondas and the Volkswagens. And a lot of people didn't know what was happening. It goes back to Edward Deming, who was an American who was rejected here for his ideas on quality, actually went to Japan and helped them develop this idea that it's not about setting a standard, it's about creating a culture to continuously improve what you do. And the way standards worked back in the day was if you were in manufacturing, you had, okay, we need 95% quality. We will accept only 5% defects. You set up your whole system to get that standard there that you make sure that you don't have more than 5% defect coming out. When you're making automobiles or something expensive, 5% is a pretty big deal when you have that many flaws. But the problem with it is not only do you set a fixed standard, but the process that produces that standard is also locked in. And so when you know you need to cut cost or improve quality, what you have is everybody running around and say, let's buy cheaper supplies. People need to work harder. They need to work smart, but the process stays the same. And what you're doing is working harder with the same system, hoping to get to 95% quality. But what the total quality movement in America was about, instead of centralizing the decision and sending out memos that we need to do it less expensively, we need to do it quicker, but we don't allow people to change the process. A lot of you know this, but the whole idea of producing quality is pushing decision-making down to the shop floor or the operating room or the classroom. Is let people make decisions and give them incentives to improve the quality. And I've toured hundreds of manufacturing plants, and it's been so great to see what America's been doing over the last couple of decades. But to go in a plant today and see the workers who over time have figured out how to save seconds how to save steps. When only a few years ago, when they were working on a jet engine, or they would walk over and get a tool, they would go to back and get a part. Now, when they go about fixing an engine, they have a whole template of the tools they know they need that are on a roller. They don't have to take a step. And all the parts are already put in place so that they can pick. And what they've done over the years is save steps and seconds. But when you total it all up, it's millions of dollars. The cost goes down and the quality goes up. Cost goes down, quality goes up, and the workers are more in charge of what they're doing. It is a phenomenon that's almost irrational to folks who believe that centralized control can actually produce better quality at lower cost. It doesn't happen. Manufacturing is coming back in America because of lean manufacturing, ISO 9000, 10,000, wherever they are today. But it's the same in the service business. And I worked with colleges and public schools and hospitals. You know, for so long they said, okay, if the customer satisfaction is 95%, we're good. If it falls a little below that, everybody needs to work a little harder. But the process and the systems were set in place. And the people who were delivering those services did not have any authority to change the way they did things. And what happened is quality was locked in. And what happened with General Motors is they had 95% quality expectations, and that stayed the same. What happened in Japan was they had a culture of continuous quality improvement, and constantly the quality went up, the cost went down, and so we were not only stuck at 95%, we were stuck at that level continuously while the rest of the world began to pass us by. That's what's happened in education. As you've seen the federal government come in with its programs, and I've worked with local school boards working on education, working on their budgets, and when you put up on a blackboard all the federal programs that they need to implement and the money that comes with it, and then all the local money that has to be used to match the federal programs, there's almost no discretionary money left to do what they know needs to be done in the classroom. So the idea of standards is good if you're thinking about goals and objectives in the short term. But if you're talking about fixing a permanent standard that's based on a certain type of testing or measurement, what you're going to do is lock in mediocrity and make it very difficult to change over the long term. And those who try to change it are putting their jobs at risk. We already see that happening. In addition to visiting manufacturing plants, when I've been traveling around the country, whenever I can, I try to visit a school. And a few weeks ago, we were in Alabama, and I visited a private Christian school called Cornerstone Christian School. And it was in an inner city, all at-risk kids, almost all African American except for the students that the teachers brought their own kids to be in that school. It was a neighborhood that appeared dangerous to drive through. But this school had been operating a few years. And when I went in the front door, the principal was waiting there with some of the students. They had on their uniforms of khakis and a kind of a navy golf shirt. And I had a second grader, I think I had a sixth grader. They said, "Welcome, Senator DeMint." They looked me in the eye, they shook their hands. I knew immediately something was going on in the school. Every classroom, discipline, learning. And every teacher had control of the classroom, the ability to adjust to individual students, to work in that classroom in a way that it improved the outcomes in that one class. And the school had that kind of flexibility too. They got no money from the state or the government. They had to raise all the money, but the students were performing well ahead of their peer group in all the areas, particularly of the same demographics. And after we did our tour, the principal took me in her office to show me her graphs. And she was talking about standards and continuous improvement. But the peer group that this group had been in was the bottom level. And she also showed that the wealthier parts of the community, this was in Birmingham, their scores were up here, but the No Child Left Behind standards were somewhere in between. And that she showed that the things they were doing, that they had begun to track well above their peers in that socioeconomic group and the ones in the same geographic area. And they were almost up all the way to where the midline was with where the standards had been set. So they had improved drastically over their peer group. But according to standards, they were still rated as slightly below average. The interesting thing was to see the higher levels were now trending down towards the standards, as we heard earlier in Massachusetts. Massachusetts had been benchmarking themselves against the best in the world. Once they start benchmarking against the standards, you'll see they begin to decline towards it. And that happens with a fixed standard system. Instead of continuously improving and looking for the best of the best to benchmark against, you tend to move back towards the standard. And even those who are improving, like Cornerstone, were being judged as being below average, even though they were on their way to the top, dealing with the most difficult students. But after walking through the school, I just felt so good about what they were doing and about what people could do themselves, because I knew every child in that school now has a chance to succeed. And it's not only changed them, but the whole neighborhood around them, instead of vandalizing the school and things that normally go on, have created a protected area that nobody messes with that school. And it's creating better families in the neighborhood because of what's going on there. But this can't be done by a central planner in Washington, D.C. And we know that it doesn't work. Centralization of command and control doesn't work. But continuing quality improvement, pushing decision-making down. And that's what we need to go for. We should not be afraid of allowing schools to actually improve what they do. I visit a lot of schools, and I go in a lot of good ones. But the good ones inevitably are being run by a principal who operates on my OM, or my maxim for life is you don't ask permission, you ask forgiveness. And they're willing to take a risk in a system to do the things they need to be done. And the same thing in a classroom of teachers who step outside the framework to try to do what needs to be done. If we created that culture in our school where every teacher was empowered to continuously improve what was going on in her classroom, every principal was empowered to continue to work and to benchmark against other schools in their area, other schools somewhere else in the country, other schools in the world, to continuously improve. That's why we need the flexibility to have ground-up decision-making. And this illusion, this utopian idea that if we give people in a central area the authority to make decisions for us, that it's going to improve quality. Folks, there is no incident that I can think of at the federal level where that has occurred. There's no federal program producing quality and efficiency. There's no federal program that's effective. I mean, you can take big programs that folks will say, well, Social Security and Medicare are working, only if you mortgage our future. There are tens of trillions of dollars in debt, and increasingly Medicare pays doctors less every year to see patients. It's only a matter of time before most smart doctors are not going to take Medicare or Medicaid. And so let's set aside this illusion that somehow taking the money and the cover page of Common Core is going to give you more quality than you already have here in North Carolina. The history of Common Core, you know, and it's a lot of the federal programs. It actually started innocently with some governors thinking, let's come together, create a standard, we'll all accept it. But the Obama administration saw an opportunity there that they didn't have by trying to pass something through Congress. They saw not just adapting it, but codifying it in a way that they could use that to entice states who wanted to get out from under No Child Left Behind, who wanted money, and this promise of flexibility. But you know, once the federal government takes this standard, then they control the testing. If you control the testing, you control the curriculum. And if you control the curriculum, you control the minds and the hearts of our children. Anyone who believes that the federal government is going to teach The American ideals of hard work and personal responsibility and free enterprise and faith and the concepts of freedom. Anyone who believes that is irresponsibly naive. Anyone who believes that the federal government is creating an education program that the teachers' unions don't support is irresponsibly naive. Because the teachers' unions could definitely control this administration. I can promise you that. I've worked, and I know that they don't want flexibility at the state level. Because I've tried to pass legislation that gave states flexibility. When No Child Left Behind came through, I offered an amendment that we now call A+, that would give states the ability to opt out, almost like a charter school. You accept a certain level of standards, you take the money, but you get it done your way. The teachers' unions were so opposed to that, even offering a few states that opportunity. Every time we try to give any flexibility to states, any choice, they're against. And anyone who believes that the federal government, with this new Common Core program, is bucking the unions is irresponsibly naive. Folks, North Carolina has made a large amount of progress. As a matter of fact, we've used it in different parts of the country to get other states to move ahead. We were in Texas a couple of months ago saying, okay, you're doing good on the economic front, but not on the school choice front. Look at what we see happening in North Carolina and Florida and other places. We've got Governor Perry charged up. He doesn't want to be outdone. But why go backwards? And a lot of you have asked what you can do, and it doesn't take very many, as we saw with Heather in Indiana. But right now, your congressional delegation doesn't think anyone's paying attention, and they probably really don't know what's going on. Because it really has not been much of an issue in Washington. The Obama administration completely went around Congress in doing this. They couldn't get No Child Left Behind reauthorized, so they saw this as an opportunity. But the governor, thankfully, Lieutenant Governor is very engaged in this. If people become informed, they'll have a lot of the emotions that you had today. You'll be worried, you'll probably be angry that this is going on without you even knowing about it. And all it's going to take is a few people bringing this to the attention of legislators. And as Heather mentioned, the groups that are already in place, Civitas, Tea Parties, a lot of groups, if they know that the public is paying attention, then the other interest groups that are basically controlled by the left, whether it be the information teachers get and school board members get and administrators, the principals get, all comes from associations that are very liberal. So these folks may be all supported because what they've seen sounds so wonderful. There are a lot of things in Common Core that you say, yeah, we need to do that. And you do. But you don't need to fix it in stone at the federal level so that you can't continuously improve it. So I think the future is in your hands on this issue. The folks in the room today, there is enough critical mass here to change it. That's why we're involved at Heritage, because it's not only important to you. We know if North Carolina does the right thing on this and pushes back, it's going to get a lot of other states pushing back, and it could help us stop this program altogether. So thanks for being here. Thanks for being good citizens, being informed and engaged. That's all it's going to take to save our country. So thanks for having us.